So before we begin, I just want to acknowledge that we're meeting on the traditional, ancestral, unceded territories of the First Nations and Native American peoples. Here where I am in Vancouver, those peoples are the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations. But I know where many of you are, you're on the land of other nations. Always, but especially during this difficult time, let us remember our connection to our sisters and brothers in these nations, and pray for the day in which we might be with them in right relationship. Over to you, Harold.
Oh, thank you so much, Kathy. I always like to sort of reintroduce what we're doing in a different way. And these mystics, Jennifer asked that really good question a couple of weeks ago. And here's another way to answer it. Why pick out these 10 women? They're all mystics for one thing. They're all concerned with forming an intentional relationship with the divine or higher reality. They're all very productive. Like if you look at their lives, they stand out in terms of how much they were able to accomplish. Another quality they have is I consider them very admirable. They had moral and spiritual qualities that look like they're exemplary in many respects. And then they also have a quality that I would call universal. In other words, it's hard not to find them significant from whatever angle you're coming from. In other words, from whatever your faith background might be, or whatever national background you might have, or whatever cultural background, these women seem to have something to offer, right? So that's why I say they seem to me universal. Okay, that's another reason to pick them. We're looking at Tahirih today, who I say is sort of one of those wee mystics that is very concerned with humanity's collective spiritual growth. Another one like that in our series was Hildegard. She seemed to be looking at humanity as a whole. And then the last woman we'll look at, Barbara Marx Hubbard, was a futurist. And she also is very collectively or outward looking. And I call her a wee mystic. Next week, our next session will be this lady, Mirra Alfassa, who's called the Mother. She worked at Auroville in southern India. She's both an I mystic and a we mystic combined. You'll see when we look at her. In talking about Tahirih, this name, it's hard to pronounce, but imagine that it's spelled T-A-H-I and then R-A-Y, Tahirih, with the accent on the first syllable. That would be close to how the Persians think of her. Okay, I want to look at page 3 first. And I don't think I numbered the pages for you, but the third page says at the top, exemplary women for all ages. And I want to sort of zoom in on Tahirih from a wide angle lens. I could touch another course on great women of history that are not mystics, right? I could do that too, because I've kind of spent some time on this. But so if you think of like 7 of the major religions, I noticed a pattern that to me is utterly surprising and important. The pattern is, if you look at the founder of each of the major religions, let's say Moses, and you say, in this story, do 2 women stand out? What 2 women stand out the most? And let's say you looked at the Christian story and said, asked the same question, what 2 women stand out the most? Same with Buddhism. So it's utterly amazing. It looks to me like you can categorize one woman that stands out is a nurturer, a very receptive and responsive and caring figure. That's often the mother of the founder. It could be the sister. And then there's another woman who you could call assertive or active. That is, she goes out into the community and she's not afraid to take risks. She's not necessarily nurturing, in her personality. She's very forceful, outward reaching. Okay, so if you look at the story of, say, Moses, his sister Miriam, I don't think this is emphasized in Bible stories, but she's the one that made sure that when he was floating down the Nile River, that he ended up in the Pharaoh's court, right? And she made sure the Pharaoh's daughter, would take care of him. Like, she's a very nurturing figure, this Miriam. Oh my goodness. And then the most assertive woman in the story of Moses would be Deborah. She was one of the early judges. And the judges were a system instituted by Moses to kind of spread this new legal system, moral, religious legal system. Okay, Deborah was very powerful, a prophetess, a leader, a poetess, a writer. So that jumps out. It seems to me those two women stand out. If you look, say, you won't know the religion Zoroastrianism very much, but similarly, the mother of Zoroaster was very nurturing, and his daughter was the one who actively spread the Zoroastrian faith that eventually converted the whole Persian Empire, right? So she was very significant, Purochista. Then in Hinduism, the first wife of Krishna, Rukmini, is sort of a role model for how to be a nurturing spouse and parent, right? And incredibly nurturing. But there was a very powerful woman named Draupadi who was almost like a lawyer. She could argue a case in court. Because of the extended nature of the Mahabharata war, she worked to dismantle or weaken the warrior caste system. Very eloquent in front of very powerful people. So the second pattern I'm describing is this assertive public spokesperson, with great courage. We're talking about patriarchal cultures. So here's a woman in this early part of a religious dispensation that did this. In the case of Buddha, his mother, Mahamaya, it's hard for me to say her name, Mahamaya. Even though she died a week after Buddha was born, she nurtured him from heaven. Like, that's the story, that she kept making sure not only that his ministry would develop, but celestial beings in heaven knew that something new was happening. A new Dharma was coming into the world, and it would affect all levels of reality. That's the way she's depicted, Mahamaya. And then his aunt, the one who actually raised him, because his mother had passed away, she ended up forming and persuading the Buddha that there should be an order of nuns, Buddhist nuns, which took some, in other words, she changed the Buddha's mind. That's an incredibly persuasive, assertive task. In the case of Jesus, we have to say Mother Mary is the nurturing figure, obviously, and Mary Magdalene, the one who's incredibly assertive, the one who hosts, the one who can sort of train the apostles, the one who can explain what the resurrection's all about, right? She was a woman of means too. She was able to do the hosting. And then in case of Muhammad, his wife Khadija is the one who was the comforter, profound comforter. And either Fatima, his daughter, or Aisha, another one of his daughters, those are each held up as exemplary women by the Sunni Muslims on one hand, in the case of Aisha, or in the case of Fatima, it would be Shia, hold her up as the assertive one, the one who can speak in public, the one who can explain things, the one who can say, you're interpreting this improperly. Let me give you the correct interpretation. This takes a lot of strength to do stuff like that. Now, in the case, this is all leading up to Tahirih. She was one of the early, the most powerful, assertive woman in the story of the founding of the Baha'i faith. Incredibly powerful spokesperson, a writer, a thinker, a speaker. She took off her veil, which, if you know anything about Islamic culture, that just never happened. She did that on purpose as a symbolic act of a new day for half of the human race. Women were going to help build a new religious civilization and a new global civilization. So Tahirih is the assertive figure. And then Baha'u'llah's daughter probably would be the most nurturing figure in this little paradigm that I'm showing you. I'm not expecting you to remember those words, those names. They're not going to be on the test. But what I'm showing you is, to me, a very exciting pattern that you can see that the two different kinds of women, right, were important in the story of the founding of religious civilizations. Now, this does not get emphasized when you study religious history. It should. If you take the story seriously, you look at the roles of these two women, the nurturer, right, and the assertive, active one. They're a very important part of the story, but that gets underplayed when you study world religious history. Okay, now Tahirih, who we'll look at today, I think she's the most extreme version of what I'm calling the active, assertive person. You'll see she did completely outrageous things, and that would take so much, Jews call it chutzpah, enormous courage, right? Or strength, or self-belief. Okay, we'll look at some of those later. But anyway, that's an introduction to page 3. When I used to teach in face-to-face classes, I would make a beautiful chart that the chart would be called 14 Women Who Helped Change the World. And I would tell them about these 2 women who are associated with the founding of major religions, right? So people get a sense, oh, look, spreading across time and space, women have been part of, these patriarchal traditions. So, yes, please, Donna. Oh, unmute, please. We want to hear you. Yeah.
Just asking a question about all of these women,
Yes,
but
please.
particularly because I was reading about Tahirih. Do they have much influence today in the practice of these various religions? Like,
Oh,
I could say what I thought of, well, Mary in Catholicism is a much stronger figure than Mary in Protestantism.
that's
And
right.
I
That's
wonder
right.
if any of these are highly recognized.
Here's what I would say. Those who are deepened in their faith tradition would say yes. In other words, but I'm just saying, a well-educated Muslim knows how important Fatima is and Khadija. They know. They realize, oh, they were foundational, right? They would say that. And I think the same with Buddhist history. Those two. So, but not everyone, right? And I think it was a mistake for Protestantism to kind of forget about Mary. And I know the reason they did that, because there were all these cults built around Mary, that shrines, and they thought, oh, those were seen as methods of making money. You pay money to see a statue, so there was abuse associated with them. But I think that you lose something if you don't see the importance of these women in the development of these faith traditions. But you have to go back to the beginning and look, peel through the layers of tradition that sort of hide them, right? And those traditions are often patriarchal. They hide women's contribution. All right, so in this class, we're trying to correct that to some degree. Yeah, but that's a very important question. Do people know that? I think the answer is they should. If they really pay attention to how their faith began, how it was shaped, when in its pure form. Okay. Regarding Buddhism, remember Queen Srimala? You see, you could say she was one of those assertive ones early in the Buddhist story, and we studied her a little bit. She was in our first session. Okay, so there are women there, right? It's just, but it's hard to find them because of the way the West thinks about things. And another irony of this is it's now well understood that in the year what we call the Neolithic times, before the beginning of civilizations about 6,000 years ago, women had very important, prominent roles, right? Some even say those were matriarchal cultures that believed in the great goddess. And then there was this patriarchal takeover in the building of civilizations where men had more prominent roles. It hasn't always been the case, in human history. At least this is how I see it. And I explain some of this on page 3. Okay. Now back to page 1. I want to try to go through sort of like the timeline and about Tahirih. you know, she came from a city called Qazvin, which is famous in Iran, Persia, for having clergy. And then get this, she was born in the family with the leading clerics. Okay, so she's a daughter of clerics who outshined them. You know, it's like God has a sense of humor. For her to be born in this family, in this city, at this time is utterly interesting. But so everything she read, she not only could recite and speak about, but connect with everything else she heard about. So she had what we would call an eidetic memory. She was always reading. For one thing, you know, she was never offered a formal Islamic education, but she got it anyway because of her own reading. And she was always sort of pointing out the limitations of the views of her father and her brothers and other people. Here's another thing. In the culture of that day, if a woman spoke in public, it was from behind a screen, right? Not only did you have to wear a veil, but you were behind a screen. They didn't even want to see you at all, and you could speak from behind a screen. She would often go to a conference of all men and participate from behind the screen. And she knew all the traditions, the hadith in the Islamic faith, as well as the Quran. And she could quote passages that pointed to a certain direction that was very different. And she was saying, you know, you're misreading religious history. In the Quran, it says there's going to be a great announcement. There's going to be a promised one of all ages. There's going to be a promised age. And she says, this is it. All those things are pointing to today. So she could make the case almost like a lawyer. You know, another shocking thing is she was not only knowledgeable, but like eloquent. She would say things with metaphors, right? And theological terms. And she could do it in a literary way too. She wrote poetry. We're going to look at some of her poetry, which makes some of the, you could say, it gives her teachings. Here's another strange thing about her, and we haven't even started looking at her portfolio here, but so she knew what the Bab was all about. He's the forerunner of Baha'u'llah. They're like twin founders of the Baha'i faith, the Bab and Baha'u'llah. She knew about both of them before the second one had declared himself. I don't know if you can figure this out. Imagine that there was someone between John the Baptist and Jesus who understood John the Baptist's role and Jesus's role, who helped explain that to the early Christian community. And imagine that that woman, let's say a prophetess back in those days, imagine that she ended up saying things that were not even revealed yet by Jesus. So she knew what revelation is coming. That's the situation we have with this Tahirih. So she was like a prophetess that interlinked the two founders of the Baha'i faith. And she was martyred, we'll find out, in the year 1852. Okay, you know, I'm sort of giving you what's on this first page without going down it. Maybe I'll just say a tiny bit more and you get the idea. She told her husband that she was divorced from him. Now, this is, you know, women, you just didn't do that in those days. She said, we're divorced because you're not a true Muslim. You're not faithful. You know, so I would be willing to marry you, remain married to you if you were. And she gave all kinds of examples about how she didn't do this, she didn't do that, he didn't do this, he didn't do that, when that was his role and that was his responsibility. So she says, you know what, I'm declaring myself free of the whole family. Right? She had 3 kids, they were old enough. She says, I'm going on and I'm supporting the cause of God. The cause of God is now developing in our midst, and I'm called to do that. You know, another thing that happened, the king of Persia, get this sounds like a storybook. The king of Persia wants to marry her because she's physically beautiful. She's morally powerful. She's very eloquent. She can talk to anyone about anything and always bring it back to the state of humanity that we're evolving to right now. So she says to him, no, that his priorities are very narrow, that it's a whole new day. her calling is to bring about a whole new world. Sorry, can't marry you. Okay. Anyway, she did. Here's another thing. There are conferences in those days, so all the clergy, the so-called experts, get together along with a few civic leaders to try to talk to her, to tell her she's wrong. You see, she's causing a tremendous fuss all over Persia. An example of how much fuss she causes, she went to one village that had about 2,000 people, and 1,200 of them, after a couple of her talks, all wanted to follow her. She was a follower of the Bab. She's bringing about a whole new world religion. And she was preparing the way for Baha'u'llah later, who 19 years after the Bab declared, he said, I'm the one that the Bab said was coming. Now, and Tahirih knew about who was coming before everyone else did. Before Baha'u'llah said he was coming, she knew he was the one. So she was powerfully persuasive. What else happened? Here's another example of her power. The doctor of the king was a Jewish guy. There were wealthy, sophisticated Jews in Iran at that time, in Persia. And he just happened to catch one of her talks behind a screen. He was listening. And he's going, wow, I'm paraphrasing. She's really connecting the dots. So she's describing not only how the Quran and the Hadith point to a new day, so does the New Testament, so does the Bible, right? This has all been known. Humanity's been getting ready for this. This is the new day, capital N, capital D. Anyway, so the doctor hears all this and he goes, you know something? She's for real. So this doctor tells the Shah, I'm a follower of this new religion. I'm sorry, I'm not Jewish anymore. I'm not Muslim either. I'm following this new religion, which is the culmination of all previous religions. So that happened too. Okay, here's the big one. 2/3 of the way down the page, I have there in 1848. 1848. I want to describe this historical context. In the year 1848, if you study European history, you go, uh-oh. In 1848, there were 50 revolutions where the people were starting to say, I don't think we want a king anymore. I think the people should be represented in the government and have a larger say. They called this the year of revolutions. You've heard of a book called the Communist Manifesto? That came out in the same year, 1848. Okay, over in the US in 1848 in New York, in Seneca, New York, two women especially, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott, gathered 300 women and one man to a conference. The one man was Frederick Douglass. Have you heard of Frederick Douglass? So he was a very eloquent freed slave who believed in equal rights for people independent of their race or gender. So he was the one token man that came to this conference. Okay, this conference was going on in 1848 at exactly the same time as this conference that Tahirih was at. She was at a conference of 80 Babis, that is followers of the Bab. And they were a little confused. Here was the question. The question was, are we reforming Islam? Is that what this is all about? We're reforming it, we're updating it, we're modernizing it? Or is this a whole new religion that with a whole new scripture and a whole new set of laws that creates a different kind of civilization? So you see, that was an important conference. I want to show you another example. In Christian history, in the year 50, in Jerusalem, they had a similar type of meeting. You know, some of the early disciples get together and say, is this religion, are we reforming Judaism? Are we sort of cleaning up Judaism and making it more morally pure? And we're using Jesus's teachings to reform the Jewish tradition and get rid of all the corruption? Or is this a completely new religion that's open to everyone? Like it's open even to Romans and even, you know, Greeks, and it can even go further east into the Middle East. Is this a world religion, or is it a reform of Judaism? Do you see that little question there? So, okay, so this is a question now that Tahirih goes there. And most of the Bobbies are thinking, and they're all men. She's the only woman at this conference. And most of them think that we're just cleaning up Islam. That's what we're doing. She says, no, I'm sorry. God has a much higher expectation of us. This is a whole new revelation. The Bob, who's the founder, he was in prison. He wasn't at this meeting. She said, so she starts, you know, very eloquently saying, I'm the bugle blast. I'm the trumpet. She's using the language of the Quran to talk about a whole new day. Now, later on, the Bob, who's in prison, hears about this, and he says, Tahirih is correct. Read my lips. She's right. This is not just a reform movement of Islam. This is forming a whole new religion, which will generate a global civilization and help unite the world. Tahirih is right. Now, she said this and she took off her veil, right? That was the first time she did that. So here's this beautiful woman taking off her veil and saying all this. And one guy slit his throat. He didn't die, but he wanted to kill himself. He was so freaked out by this. And okay, and so later on, they realized she was dead right. So slowly, all the Bobbies realized, oh, this what we're doing. She also said, you know, we might have to be martyred. This is not going to be easy. This is no joyride, my friends. She said, we're divine instruments. So can you imagine a woman, no veil on, saying all these things? This was extremely powerful. I want to explain what she meant by women's liberation. It's very different than what we think about in the West. I think we think it means political liberation. She was talking about spiritual liberation, that women are absolutely equal in the eyes of God to men, and that they have been oppressed for several thousand years. And this is now going to disappear. Women are actually going to help build a whole new world. It's going to have all the powers that women bring to the table, right? It's going to solve problems not with blood, but with milk. She used these metaphors. You see, it's going to solve it with words, not swords, right? Anyway, I'm just sort of giving you the feeling of all this stuff that's on page 1. So we didn't have to go down it in a boring way, but I hope you're getting an impression. Any questions, comments about this so far? You know, I have to back up and give you a sidebar. I want to give you, see, I'm talking about her from a Baha'i point of view. Okay, here's some other points of view. Muslims who are well educated know about this lady. And here's what they think. They tend to be in two schools. One of them thinks she's a great Sufi. Look at that poetry. Oh my God. They call her a Sufi writer. They say she writes as well as Rumi, and she's a woman. That's really cool. That's one view. The other view is, uh-oh, look what happens when women are not kept under wraps. They go out into public, they shake up all these villages, they cause chaos, you know, they're destroying Islam. So she's an example of why women have to be held under wraps. That's another Islamic point of view about her. There's one other point of view I'm going to share. This is the esoteric, occult view of this lady. She is seen as someone from a higher station. The stuff she knows is like transhuman. You know, she even talked about life on other planets. She said that's a fact. She talked about the future. She knew everything that she could be read, but she seemed to have started to perceive the nature of reality, period, whether she read it or not. And so there are some people who study levels of consciousness. You know, we're going to look at this when we look at the woman 2 weeks from now. If she did this too, occult philosophy and theosophy were her background. People who have that background know, some of them know about Tahirih, and they say, oh, she had a higher station, right? She was, you know, she had powers that are not strictly human, right? She's from another level of reality. Okay, that's yet another view of her. The Baha'i view simply says she was an early follower of the Bab, and she knew that Baha'u'llah was coming, and she completely understood the nature of the new revelation, and she was eloquent, and she was unafraid of anything. Her total commitment was to sort of bring this into reality and bring about a spiritual revolution.
So Harold, how did she say she knew these things? You know, like sometimes people say, oh, I've had these visions, right? Or
yeah. At first she was saying she knew it because she was connecting the dots from her reading.
Okay.
And then she started to reach other levels, and she was saying, no, I'm perceiving reality. I'm perceiving what God is telling me. She even said she could understand the past better and the future better, right? So she couldn't, and she hadn't read about some of the things she was claiming to know. So, you know, I want to have a theory about this applied to not just Tahirih, but other. You see, how does a prophet know what a prophet knows? Including prophetesses, right? Women can do this too. Sometimes it's as if the veil between this realm, physical world, and other realms gets thin. So it's like you're knowing by osmosis. There are other, you know, shamans. This is a commonly understood among indigenous and say primal peoples, that there are some people who can travel in the worlds, the underworld, the upper world, and they're subworlds, right? And they say, oh, they can do that. They don't know how, you know. It's just commonly understood. There's some people who can do that. So that's one way of putting this. But she's claiming these things, but she's doing it with such certainty that you don't think she's hallucinating because it sounds so clear, right? You know, she's looking at you in the eye and saying this and connecting it with other things and showing why you should believe such a thing. That's the best I can do, because, you know, she's over my pay grade, this lady. I mean, all these ladies are over my pay grade, but Tahirih even more so, because I think she did have a special station. In fact, that's why I introduced those 14 women. I think those 14 women had a special station too. They had powers that they did not learn, right? It was something special about them. Despite the patriarchal culture, they helped shape a whole new religious civilization, which are the mountain peaks of human history. Like if you have to tell, what did humanity do? You look at these religious civilizations, they're the big story. So that's her claim that we're now going to have a global civilization. It'll take a while and it'll be a lot of suffering in the meantime, but it's definitely coming. That's her message, right? So, okay. At the very bottom, let me show you how she died. 1852. Okay, she was born in 1817. So how old was she? Someone do the math.
She was 35.
That's all. She's 35. Okay, she's 1852, dressed in a gown of snow white silk. Oh, first of all, let me tell you where she is. She's in Tehran, the biggest city, and the mayor's wife, she's in the house of the mayor under house arrest. Like that's how they put people in prison, usually house arrest. The mayor's wife loves her, completely supports her. Okay, so she's 1850, dressed in a gown of snow white silk, told the mayor's wife, I am preparing to meet my beloved. Let no one disturb my devotions. I intend to fast until I am brought face to face with my beloved. Now, this my beloved is the language like Sufis, but in her case, my beloved means God through Baha'u'llah. In one of her poems, she talks about this beloved, right? And then she says, this is Baha or glory. It's a short nickname for Baha'u'llah, or the mediator to God, right? That's how she's thinking of all this. And she was condemned to death. So this was what she's doing in her last few hours. She's saying all this. I intend to fast until I am brought face to face with my beloved. A silken handkerchief, as planned long beforehand, she knew this was coming, was given to the executioner as the instrument of her martyrdom. Strangled, her body was lowered into a well and covered with stones, just as wished and foreseen. She had described that death earlier, like about 3 years earlier, she described exactly how she was going to die. That's another one of these, where did she get that? No one, you can't explain that in ordinary terms. She became a follower of the Bab that way. She never saw the Bab. She had a dream about a man holding up his hands and saying something like, God, I'm going to help you lift humanity up to its highest potential, something like that, way more eloquent. So then she hears that the Bab had said something like that, and that meant she had seen the Bab in her dream. So then she said, what are these Babis saying? She quickly learned, and she started to be a Babi teacher real fast. Like within a month, she's already one of the best teachers of this new point of view, which is in continuity with previous religions. It's sort of like progressive revelation. Yet it has to break sharply because the belief was religion gets old and corrupt. And then that's why you have to renew it and start with another one. Okay, any comments, questions? So I feel a little sheepish when I say she's one of the most courageous, had greatest intellectual prowess, articulate, spiritual intuition, foreknowledge, like almost better than anyone else known. That's the way it looks to me. That's sort of more of a Baha'i interpretation, but even from any other point of view, if you look at her, I'll tell you another little trick about studying her. There were ambassadors from France, England, and Russia who were in Persia. They saw all this. So they wrote notes about this lady Tahirih, right? And so the word gets back into Europe that there's this unbelievable, amazing woman in Iran. You will not believe it. So some people said, I'm going to write a play about that. Some other people said, I'm going to write a novel about that. So a bunch of literature got generated, especially in Austria for some reason, right? In France. Someone said she's the Persian Joan of Arc. I think that was the guy, one of the French ambassadors said that. So for a while there, she was talked about quite a bit in Europe. Okay. And remember that 1848, that cannot be a coincidence, at least in my mind. All those revolutions happening in Europe, the women talking about their equality, not only as a matter of law, like women are equal, that has social, cultural, religious implications. You know, it's not just a matter of, I want all these things men have, you know, it's not a petty type of argument, right? Okay. All right. What's your reactions to all this? It must stir something up.
Thank you so much. This is fascinating. I didn't know anything at all about her. I was wondering, she almost sounds like the prophetess in between the Bab and Baha'u'llah, but I'd never heard of her.
Thank you.
So,
Kathy, that's smart to say that. I mean, that's exactly right. You know, that if you look at well, at least as much as I showed you, but even more, if you go, she's a mystery to the Baha'is too. Nobody quite understands how she could know what's coming, right? And in between, that is precisely right. A prophetess of the Baha'i era, a prophetess of a whole new era. So it's a very unusual kind of position to be in, and very easy to get angry at her. Like, you know, she's not confused. She would really piss off a lot of people. You know that movie Yentl, you know, where like a woman learns to argue with rabbis, and, you know, Barbara Streisand played that. I can't help but use that in studying, in thinking about Tahirih. She's showing all these clergy, she knows more than they do. She understands it more deeply. She's channeled into higher sources of information. She's taken off her, you know, her veil.
So why was she executed, or because she was a threat?
She was called a heretic.
She was a heretic.
Heretic.
Okay.
Which is, now imagine if you're a very clergy-oriented country like Iran was, and that they're corrupt. She was a threat to their power. You know, there was a wedding planned, and she happened to be at the house next door under house arrest. Nobody went to the wedding. They went to hear Tahirih talk. A lot of men.
And after she was killed, what happened to her, to people? How did people react to that?
See, 20,000 Bobbies were killed. 20,000. That's a very precise guess as to about how many got killed. How many Christians got killed? How many Muslims got killed in Mecca? Whenever a new religion starts, it creates a social revolution and a power struggle. So she was one of many martyrs, but this is a high-profile case, right? And it's interesting that she chose to be buried in a place where you couldn't turn it into a shrine. It's not about that. It was some, you know, like an indistinct well covered over with stones, and no one knew where it was after a while. That's how she wanted it. It's not about me, she would be saying, in effect. This is about a change for the world, a divinely guided providential change. She's an instrument of it. Anyway, that's my best to try to answer stuff like that. Other comments about any of this? I hope I'm not warping it too bad. You know, I try to be scientific. And so at the very least, you have to say, she belongs on this Women Mystics course as someone influential, admirable, strong, able to overcome patriarchy, and of universal appeal. Like anybody who would study this would have to be, to some extent, impressed. That's the way it looks to me. She belongs in those categories. Okay. You know, I read an essay by a Baha'i woman scholar who said, what kind of a model is Tahirih for women? And she ended up saying, it's saying a woman has a right to be articulate in public about essential matters. She has a right, you see, in women, you know, that shouldn't be so difficult a message, right? But it has been in 6,000 years. She said, oh, wait, a new day, baby. Women get to talk, you know, in public about important things. What's coming, what should be coming, what needs to be changed, what's outrageous, what's corrupt, what's evil, what's good. What kind of a world can we co-fashion together? So she's saying all those things. So Anyway, that's one interpretation, that she's a model for women, not just Baha'i women, women period, that's an important role. Historically, there's no one doubts women are supposed to be nurturers, right? That's very well established. This is in addition to that, women can be active, proactive, articulate, policy influencers. Okay.
Just-
Can I say something?
Hello, Adele. This is my friend Adele. We have another token man here. He's over in West Van.
Very nice.
That's his daughter over there.
Hi. No, thank
Who's
you.
going to say something? This is Kathy. She's the one that started all this, interfaith sanctuary stuff. Who was just starting to say something? Sorry.
Yeah, Bev is
Oh,
gonna say
Bev. Yeah, Bev.
Yeah. What I find so amazing about her is she doesn't ask permission. She just claims her authority as a human being. And it really gives me hope and permission.
She
In a
had
sense.
authority.
She just
Oh
claimed
my
it.
goodness. Yeah.
She didn't say, well, may I take off my veil? Just takes it off and moves forward. I mean, that's what I find about American women that have had some of that. That's why I'm here to train. But I think it's marvelous.
The veil thing, I have to tell you, I was reading about this today, just today more. She didn't always take off the veil. She did it when it was a symbolic statement of something she was trying to say. She didn't want to attract attention to the unveiling. She was trying to attract attention to the message. So she would talk from behind a veil or sometimes behind a screen, but occasionally out in public, she would do this only when it was actually a symbol to say, okay, equality of women means this. Let this be a symbol. Women are equal in the eyes of God. They don't have to hide. Something along that line. That was the interpretation of this scholar I read today about her unveiling. How did she see it? And why did she not do it all the time? Right? Okay. Any other comments?
Bev, you raise a really interesting point about legitimacy, because for example, in Islam, Khadija, Fatima, Aisha, they're all given legitimacy because of their relationship to Muhammad. They don't have any legitimacy on their own. You just don't mess with the wives of the prophet. Aisha was not entirely liked. She was real uppity, what we would call a badass in today's language. And people did not appreciate her, but you didn't mess with the wife of the prophet,
So her authority, you could trace the lineage right directly to,
right.
He's one of the wives of Muhammad. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or the daughter of Muhammad, right? So that I gave him a platform.
So Tahirih's authority seemed to be intrinsic to her, right? Yeah. And I find it so cool that the Bob from prison says, oh, by the way, I heard about that fight you had at Badasht. Tahirih was right. In fact, he changed her name to Tahirih. She was Fatima something Baragani before that. And then suddenly she's the pure one. Not only is she right, but I'm giving her this name. And so she's known to history. Anyway, that's my understanding. Okay, let's go to some of her writings. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, we have time. Look at page 4 in the handout. I picked out 8 poems. And okay, let's try something. Can you read, Kathy, number 1, Arise? And I just want to say a tiny bit about it. The word friend is here, capital F. Physician is here, capital P. So Sufis interpret this to mean the friend is God, right? Or the friend maybe is the prophet. She's using that again, but she probably means the divine beloved as we now know through these 2 prophets, the Bab and Baha'u'llah. Physician. So that's God, but God working through a figure who can make things better. And this is arise. So she's talking about those who need to arise. What are the categories of the people that need to wake up? Okay, Kathy, can you read this?
Yes, absolutely. Arise, O sleeping one, the friend has arrived. Arise, shake off that earthly dust. Arise, O frail and broken-hearted one, the consoling physician has come to your bedside. Arise. O thou, half drunk with intoxication for the friend, the choice solacing wine is here. Arise. O thou who art sick with separation, the season of reunion with the friend has arrived. Arise. O thou whom autumn made melancholic, now spring really has come. Arise. Behold the new year teeming with life. Cast off that dead flesh, become reborn. Arise.
You know, you can hardly be sleepy when you hear words like this. This is like a giant wake-up call. Unbelievable. And this, you know, this sounds good in English. How good do you think this would sound in Persian? You know, they say poetry loses a lot in its translation. This sounds pretty good to me in English. Okay, let's do a few more of these. Who else is willing to read?
Sure, I will.
Okay, Bev, can you read The New Day?
Behold the new day. The world will be freed from vain fancies and superstitions. Humanity will be relieved of all confusion and doubt. Injustice will be convicted by the power of justice. Ignorance will be defeated by the power of thought. Everywhere the carpet of equity will be rolled out. Everywhere the seeds of amity will be scattered. The reign of disunity will be vanquished from all regions. The diverse peoples of the world will become one nation. That could be today. That could be for today.
That's a vision of the future, but she doesn't sound in doubt about it, does she? You know, amity means fellowship, friendliness. Everywhere the seeds of amity will be scattered.
I don't mean that it's happened today, but we could be saying this today.
We could be saying it today. We could be aspiring to it today.
Yes.
It's not exactly an easy process, right? The forming of one world community. Oh, wow. Okay. Any other comments? Let's keep rolling. Let's get anyone who, Susan, you're willing to read, and Bev is willing to read. Can you read, Susan, Daybreak?
Yep, let me get my eyes focused here. O ye great ones, the creator of the age has fashioned the universe into a paradise. This must be the day of resurrection, when morning light shall drive away all traces of darksome night. Injustice and iniquity have vanished from our midst. Now is the age of charity and munificence. All feebleness and frailty have been replaced with sustenance and power. For ages, the world's order has been turned upside down through vain imaginings of the learned. Wow, through vain imaginings of the learned. Now milk shall flow instead of bloodshed, if you but set aright the order of the world. For though the King of all kings has appeared in the manner and custom of a single nation, he will, through the mercy of the Eternal One, deliver all the peoples of the world from their burdens.
You see, these are very discussable. Like, what does she mean by all this? You could have a study group just on this one poem. All the things she's alluding to. Oh my God. Yeah, you know, you said vain imaginings of the learned. Well, that phrase covers 6,000 years of patriarchy. Oh my God, you know, I know, I just, the language has some real power. It bites. Oh my God. Okay, I got to tell you a story about the next one. You see, this next one, she's very famous for this one. This is, you see, they think she's a Sufi. They just interpret this in complete Sufi terms, which is fine. So it's like love. It's all about ecstasy. What has the beloved given you? But in her case, the beloved seems to be God having incarnated, so to speak, through the Bab and Baha'u'llah. These two new prophets are coming to build a whole new world order. Wow. I mean, that's the Baha'i interpretation of what she's saying. But it's also just plain beautiful. You know, so some of her poetry has been put to music, You remember Mirabai? Because of her poetry, it became songs, plus she made it into song. But a lot of this has been made into beautiful music. Okay, who's willing to read this one? Did I imagine your hand was up, Bev? Are you chickening out?
Okay, I'll start.
All right.
The realm of ecstasy. I am a jewel. You are the jeweler. I am silver. You are the mine owner. I am a seed. You are the husbandman. What is in this body of mine if you have become me? If you have displaced me, what is this corporal form of me?
Let's pause here. You see the capital Y, the U. You see, this is the friend from the point of view of Sufi poetry, or she's talking to these manifestations of God, the Bab and Baha'u'llah, or to God through a personalized imagery, right? Okay, continue, sorry.
When the fire of your love burst into flame, its conflagration consumed the essence of all that I was. It purged me, cleansed me of my infidelity and my Islam. Now I prostrate myself only before the arch of your brow. For me, there is now no distinction between a church and a Kaaba, and the Kaaba. Though mortal, I have become eternal through remembrance of him. Truly, I am a drunkard when it comes to that sacred wine. I am athirst in the valley of wonderment. I am a wanderer in the desert of affliction. Who can know what will happen next to my emboldened heart? I am in love with his holiness, the Lord Most High. I am in love with the face of the cherished beloved. I am a wanderer in the desert of his love. I have forgotten all else and ask only for you. Every member of my body is filled with your love. At my lowly hovel, love planted its banner. At my door, my beloved called on me. The wine of God was poured into my goblet. I am estranged from the world and from myself. My sole aspiration is to attain the presence of God. I am the servant of one who beats the drum. I am the wandering bird who has fallen into your snare. I am the wise owl who calls out in your night. I am the one who has become nothingness, who is alive only in your name, whose pain and self alike have become entirely obliterated.
So that is pure Sufism or mysticism, or you could call love mysticism.
Wow.
But remember, it's hard to escape that, like her task, right? It's part of her mission. You know, another thing, it said here, it purged me, it cleansed me of my infidelity and of my Islam. You know, see, the Sufi interpretation would be Islam means Islamdom. So Islam means, in this case, the rigidity of the institutions of Islam. Forget about the spiritual nature of it. See, Sufis are critical of Islamdom. Okay, so, but she could mean something else. If I'm getting rid of Islam, what's next? How about a new world religion? That's how it sounds to Baha'i ears, but you know, this is what she has. And so you could hear this in the traditional Sufi literature mode. Okay.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, this really, if you didn't know any better, you would think that Rumi wrote this. I mean,
That's
so much of the imagery is Rumi,
that's-
but Rumi was like,
yeah.
what, 500, 600 years before this?
He was in
But
about
also
1250. This is 1850.
Yeah.
This is 600 years later. But see, that's a good statement. See, Rumi is the sort of gold standard for Sufi poetry, right? So if Rabi'a sounds like Rumi, she's earlier, she's 400 years before. She's anticipating Rumi. If Kabir sounds like that, we say, that's cool, he sounds like Rumi. So you're right, this does sound like Rumi. But she, because of this other stuff that she did, we know she's a revolutionary of a different kind, not a political one, a spiritual revolutionary. Okay, we got to keep rolling here. There are 4 more of these things. You think we can do it? Oh, it's only 8:04. Not bad. Linda, can you read one?
Unmute. The Blessed Beauty.
Let me
Since
explain.
the-
I got to say something about this.
Okay.
The name Baha'u'llah means beauty. No, excuse me. It means glory. Baha'u'llah means follower of glory. But one of his titles for Baha'is is the Blessed Beauty. But she called it this before anyone called him the Blessed Beauty.
Mm.
Like, how did she know that? Okay, continue. Sorry.
All right. The Blessed Beauty. Since the appearance of that unknowable king, so lofty in his glorious station, took place with nobility in the realm of the soul, so beauteous and honored is his word. All the souls of both man and jinn have been sacrificed at his feet and consumed with adoration. Lovers have laid down their lives in the path of reunion with him. Baha has dawned and glistened. Baha has appeared, adorned with splendor, and the summits of existence have flowed toward his beauty. Countless verses, one after another, have descended from his honeyed tongue. Countless prophets of God speed forth to bask in the beauty of his presence.
So she's talking about someone named Baha, which is glory, and Baha'is think she's talking about Baha'u'llah. However, a Sufi would know Baha means glory. It's one of the names of God, right? We always remember names of God. She's picking out one to emphasize. That's how it sounds to Sufi ears, usually. But Baha also means the people who followed Baha'u'llah. That's what Baha'is understand that to mean. So anyway, this is like what Kathy said earlier is so amazing. She's a prophetess between the 2 prophets. She's talking about the importance of Baha'u'llah before it's been officially announced. She's saying he countless verses, one after another, have descended from his honeyed tongue. You know the word jinn, you see that name, D-G-I-N-N, those are spirits. Baha, where does that, all the souls of both man and jinn, it means spirits. So it's not only souls of human beings, but celestial spirits too, or spirits in the desert. There are other realities that are spiritual. All of them are sort of being awakened. It's like a wake-up call on different levels. I think that's what she's sort of saying here. Okay. Ooh. What? We got to do 3 more real fast. Here's the next one is also one of her famous ones that's well known by people who never have heard her name. They know that this is a beautiful poem, right? And so again, Susan's going to say it sounds like Rumi. Who wants to read? You're all reading fantastically. Okay, Kathy, your turn again. Face to face.
Okay, and then Donna can get the next one. Perfect. Okay, face to face. If ever I should behold you, face to face, eye to eye, I would be bold to recount my heart's plaint, point by point, verse by verse. Like Saba the east wind, I have searched everywhere for your countenance, from house to house, door to door, alley to alley, from quarter to quarter. Bereft of your visage, my 2 eyes have wept such bloody tears, tigress after tigress, stream upon stream, spring after spring, brook upon brook. Your bloom-like mouth, your face enveloped with ambergris hair, blossom to blossom, flower to flower, tulip to tulip, fragrance to fragrance. Your perfect brow, your eyes, your beauty spot have preyed on the bird of my heart, sense to sense and heart to heart, feeling to feeling and mood to mood. My desperate heart has knitted your love to the very fabric of my being, string by string, thread by thread, warp by warp, and woof by woof. Tahirih has searched every layer of her heart, but found only you there, sheet by sheet, fold by fold, cover by cover, over and over again.
You know, if you want to write someone a love letter, this could give you some ideas. But
Like the Song of Solomon.
it sounds like the Song of Solomon. Thank you for noticing that. Oh my goodness. You know, ambergris, I got to tell you what that is. Whale oil. It means anointed. Have you heard this idea before? That you anoint someone's hair with oil? This means you love them, but also means God loves them, or it's sort of like it's a higher level, an anointed one. Jesus the Christ means Jesus the anointed one. Okay, I'm just saying that metaphor, it was all through the Middle East. Anointing. And she talks, oh, sorry.
She also does the Sufi thing here where she names herself in the third person.
Absolutely. Throwing your own name in there. You know, and Kabir did that too. Nanak did it because Nanak was, in fact, yeah, those Sikh scriptures often have that in there, right? Nanak, at the end, he'll say, Nanak says, or Nanak. So here, yeah, she's doing that. She's using that technique. Absolutely true. You know, I'm amazed by this point by point, verse by verse. How often can you get away with that? She finds things to show the depth of her search. But that's what I think all those things are pointing to, how hard she's looked. All the time she was reading that literature and trying to connect the dots. Now she thinks she's getting it. She's celebrating. Okay, there's only two more. And the last one is called her farewell address. Like saying, I'll tell you what, folks, I'm leaving. And you know what? I wish I could leave more than once. What? It's too bad I only have one life to give. I'd like to give a few more. You know. Anyway, you know, I grew up in the United States. I'm not proud of that, but there was a guy down there, Nathan Hale, and he is famous for having said, my only regret, he was about to be, killed, right? Because he's a revolutionary. My only regret is that I have only one life to sacrifice for my country. Nathan Hale said that. And wait till you see how Tahirih puts that. Okay, but before that, Donna, can you read God the Creator? That one, if you're willing.
God the Creator. From behind the veils of grandeur, the face of God has appeared with honor and nobility. From bright beams of light, the form of God has appeared with perfection and glory. Lo, when he spoke of the ecstasy of the most beneficent, he unlocked all the closed portals. Indeed, his reviving call of hasten unto me has dissolved the rust of doubt, superstition, and wavering. Indeed, in this very age of every veiled illusion become unveiled through him. The greatest name has appeared in earthly form and made every cherubim ecstatic with delight. The greatest name has illumined every other name and led the way to the banquet of the nearness of God. O God, what benevolence and bounty this is, that thou has been so clearly manifested through the attributes of Baha.
So remember, Baha'u'llah has not declared yet, but she's talking about Baha. And then she says the greatest name. See, in Baha'i literature, the greatest name it means something like the glory of the most glorious. The glory of the most glorious. And that symbol in Persian is like one of the symbols of the whole Baha'i faith. But the crazy thing here is she's using Baha'i language that became very important, say 10 or 15 years later in Baha'i literature. She's anticipating it. So that's why that question that came up before, how did she know this? Not easy to explain. Even Baha'is can't explain it. But she had special power. She has a high station. That's the way we clumsily talk about it. Or she knew things on the other side of the veil. Or she knew the future. You know, remember we use the analogy of John the Baptist and Jesus. What if there had been somebody in between them who started to say things like, that sounded like parables, or that sounded like the things that Jesus would later teach, using some of the same language that was in, say, the Sermon on the Mount. That's how this is. She's using Baha'i revealed language before it became Baha'i revealed language. Very strange. Okay.
You know what's
right.
interesting is that
Yeah.
all supports the Baha'i belief in itself, because this idea that there's a new arising that's sort of coming, it's like the time for the new age is now, and so it's starting to pop up in different ways with different prophets. Do you know what I mean? It's very interesting.
Precisely. New age. You see, that's an interesting phrase because that's used in Baha'i writing, but new age, that's an idea that's been around a long time. And the Theosophists, the Occult, New Agers, they're called. Okay, people who are spiritual but not religious say, I feel that this is coming. I want to be part of it. Anyway, I'm interrupting you though, but I jumps out at me too, right? This age thing, right? Yeah. Well, finish your thought though. I'm sorry, I interrupted you, I think.
Oh yeah, no problem. No, it's just really interesting because I'm used to thinking that a new religion comes because there's someone who brings it, but this almost kind of presents it that it's the time for the new religion to come. And so it's arising with multiple people, not just one person who kind of spearheads it. You know what I mean?
Kathy, that is so important. You know, so the way I've been studying that is promised one and promised age. Promised one, promised age. Like some Jewish people, I think they say, I don't believe in the Messiah. I believe in a messianic age. You see, so you're making a big point. I think a lot of people identify more with the age than the idea of a prophet. And so, but both are, you know, you could say both have some truth in them, but she's sort of skirting the line. Are we talking about a whole new day coming? Or are we talking about new prophets coming? She's as much talking about the day as anything. Right? That's why I call her, I gave her a title for this course. Prophet, what did I call her? Baha'i New World Visionary. New World Visionary and Martyr. Okay, willing to die for it. Sue, you're here. Thank you for coming. Oh, but you're muted. We can't hear you.
No, sorry, I was at work and I totally got him. And then I thought, oh my goodness, it's tonight. So apologies. I'll have to listen to the recording.
Yeah, listen to it. Oh my God.
Sounds good.
I got way off the script. I hardly followed the notes at all. I don't.
Oh, well,
but
we're glad you got the notes because it gives you something concrete to ponder, right?
Exactly. So, terrific background.
But what I was thinking is that all of the women that you were talking about have they've got the prophecy or the precognition, or, you know, they're more in touch with the spirit, their fate. They're more in touch with the spiritual world than some of us concrete people. So like Rabi'a had the same sort of, like, I think they all seem to get in touch more with the spiritual world, right?
Thanks so much for bringing that up. You remember last time, if Teresa of Avila would say, I want to tell you some stuff that I learned in the seventh mansion or the sixth mansion. Said you go up there and you hear God talking in locutions, and you hear things that you can't even explain to anybody. Remember her saying that kind of stuff?
I miss Teresa, sorry.
Oh, okay. No, but I'm reinforcing what you said. All of these women talked about, they got something and they described it in different ways. Hildegard said, I go up, rise above, and I see the earth from up there, and I can look out and see different people living on different parts of the earth. So yeah, visionary, levels of consciousness, you might say. That's how Mirra Alfassa is going to talk about it next time. You know, the Aurobindo, the lady who worked with him, levels of consciousness. Yeah, she's, you know, it's revelatory. That's another interesting little word. She's being shown something. Something's being revealed to her, and she's telling you what it is, right? Through her poetry, through her public talks. We got one more, and this is the farewell address. Oh, who wants to take this on? Sue just got here. I don't want to give this to her. Adele, are you there behind the black screen, or are you doing like Tahirih behind the screen? No, I don't know if he's there anymore.
Okay, I just lifted the veil.
You lifted the, are you willing to read?
I'm taking care of my
Okay,
wife.
never mind.
My wife got COVID and I'm taking care of the kids.
Oh,
Oh,
no.
good for
yeah.
you. Oh, poor
Yeah.
her. Hmm.
Oh,
I-
okay, we'll
I-
deal with you
wow.
later. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, my goodness.
No,
Okay.
we're all good. We're all
Susan,
good.
Healing prayers, healing prayers.
Susan, let me pick on you.
But
As-
thank you very much. I'm enjoying this very, very much.
Wonderful. You know, I kept busy when I was sick with a post-booster shot flu that lasted for a month, but I kept learning stuff. Oh, my God. Okay, Susan,
Okay,
can
let's
you
do it.
read this one? There's some fine print at the bottom. Sorry, I had to squeeze it all onto this
I'll
page.
squint. I
All
got it.
right, all right, all right.
As God is my witness, I sacrificed my life for nearness to him. As God is my witness, I am steadfast in my loyalty to him. As God is my witness, the first day I arrived at the station of the eternal, I put aside everything except him. As God is my witness, from the ancient eternity and the revolution of ages, I have been steadfast in my loyalty to him. As God is my witness, he looked on me with eyes of acceptance. By God, there is no other object of my affection than acceptance by him. As God is my witness, look at Solace of the Eye with her immaculate heart.
That's one of her names, Solace of the Eye. Sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
Okay, who is the object of her affection? Not but Baha'u'llah. As God is my witness, I beg from the magnanimity of the self-sufficient God that my blood might be shed for Baha'u'llah. As God is my witness, all the hardships I have endured in the passing of these days was but in the path of his companionship. As God is my witness, any speck of purity in me has been made possible through his bounty and favor alone. As God is my witness, would that he could create me anew, that yet again I might sacrifice my life for him.
Okay, let's say we're in a class and you have to have a real pop quiz. I'm giving you a pop quiz on this. How long has she been at this? Just according to this poem we just read. How long?
Like all her life?
It's longer than that. Read the fine print. I'm sorry.
Oh, that
She
she
said,
keeps,
the first day I arrived at the station of the eternal. From the ancient eternity and the revolution of the ages, I have been steadfast in my loyalty to him. How long has she been loyal to him? You see what
she's
I'm asking? According
making
to,
an allusion to the soul that was almost pre-existent.
thank you. Something strange and uninterpretable is being claimed. You know how when Jesus said, before Abraham was, I am. You remember that utterance that sort of, it blew away the Pharisees. Now, some people
that's the
say this is
Logos.
reincarnation, but it could be what Sue is talking about. Part of me knows that, God had a plan for everyone's role way back, way back. And it was only a matter of time when we came into existence. I'm not saying I'm understanding what she's saying. I'm trying to. She's really making a very interesting claim, but she's looking at herself in cosmic perspective, right? The very first time God began to think of this figure called Tahirih, that's how, from then on, she's been working. Whether or not she was alive on the earth, who cares?
But
Anyway,
Harold, isn't there an Islamic I don't know, myth or something that all the souls were part of a reed bed. And then when the human is conceived, then a soul comes out of the reed bed and is associated with the body. So it's as if all the souls are sitting in the spiritual world, but basically they don't become a human being till the soul associates with the body. So we don't remember being in the reed bed. But then there's an archetypal thing where God says, am I not your God? And then the people answer yes.
And they did that before they were on the earth. That's
right, when they were in the reed bed, but I don't know, I can't
Susan
remember
knows
where
about
that's
this.
from.
Susan, this has come up.
Yeah, so a lot of Rumi's poetry
Thank you.
references, it's all longing to go back to the reed bed and so
I got goosebumps when I came across the same idea in Zoroastrian. That goes back 3,000 years. This idea that we had a birth that was way before our birth on earth. This was when God, so God is the architect of the whole universe. And the very first time that God thought of a certain person, that's when you started in a way, right? And who knows what forms you've taken since then, but you're not out of the blue entirely, right? There's no accidents. And there's even a line in, do you remember when, covenantal imagery, like there was a primal covenant. All human beings said, okay, we're in. We're ready to be born someday and, follow your guidance as well as we can. So this is, I'm interpreting, stretching. She's really pushing at something like this. And it's a very big idea that I've seen different versions of. The esoteric occult have versions of this, right? I've seen this, reincarnation is another version of this. It sort of makes it very concrete. But I find something like this just about everywhere, right? That she's giving a whole new angle on who Tahirih is, right? Wow, this is very interesting. Her station is giving us a glimpse that once you become a prophetess, you can see back into the past and into the future further than ordinary folks. This is sort of like showing what you can do with her station. Okay, there were some early Buddhist thinkers that talk like this too. Among them was Nagarjuna. Anyway, I'm just trying to say it's an idea I've heard, right, from different religious traditions. Okay.
Yeah, but Harold,
Yeah.
She's not a manifestation of God. She's not the word made manifest. When Jesus said, before Abraham was, I am,
Yeah.
he's a pillar of the Logos. But
I totally agree with you, but her language sounds like to some other ears, like she might be even claiming something more. I don't think it is a manifestation, but her station is high.
Sure.
That I think anyone who would look at this would say, oh, she's no ordinary person. How did she know this? How did she say it? What gave her the courage to do what she did? How did she know the exact way in which she was going to die?
Right.
How did she know what Baha'u'llah was going to preach about 10 years later?
Yeah,
right?
your course is about mystical women, and she's a mystical
Definitely.
woman, right? So
Definitely.
maybe
Okay.
that's part of it.
Anything else, people? Sorry, we got close to the deadline. We're coming up on 8:30. We did it. I didn't think we could read those 8 poems,
Wow. Wow.
having done all that other stuff.
Well, I will enjoy watching this over again.
Definitely. Okay, a quick review. Next time, have you heard of Aurobindo and Auroville in India? Any of you heard of that? Oh, no. Okay. But you're going to get another surprise because this lady is in the esoteric tradition. Furthermore, the whole idea of evolution, spiritual evolution, that has really come into vogue since the late 1800s into the 1900s. So the mother, Mirra Alfassa and Aurobindo, are all about spiritual evolution. And they created a city, Auroville, that was supposed to be not in any country. A city for anyone who cares about the whole world and the future of humanity. That was the idea. Oh, so that's interesting in yet another way. And here's another weird fact about this lady. She met Abdul Baha, who's the son of Baha'u'llah. Abdul Baha is a very important figure in the Baha'i faith, the son of Baha'u'llah, who was the successor to Baha'u'llah. She met him in France, and she wrote her impressions of him. And they were along the line of, I've never met a more sincere, powerful, visionary man than this. I like him a lot. He's bringing about a whole new world, right? So then she goes on and meets Aurobindo, and they start to build a whole new world too, along the line of, similar, like there's the boundaries between nations need to disappear. The boundaries between religions need to disappear. We need to allow everyone, men and women, to evolve and bring out their best. So those are that's the sneak preview of the mother, Mirra Alfassa. We look at her in 2 weeks, I think. 2 weeks. We'll send you the stuff. All right, thank you so much. Oh, Adele, I'm
so
going to
much,
pray for
Harold.
you
This
as
was
soon as we
wonderful.
check out.
Thanks so much. Anyway, good to
Thank
be
you
here.
so
Oh,
much.
this was wonderful. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you
Very
very
good.
much.
Thanks, Harold. Kathy.
Of course. All right. Take care, everybody. See you in 2 weeks.
Okey-doke.
And yes, we'll pray for your family, Adele. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Okay, take
Thanks,
care.
Harold.
Okay, bye.
Kathy. Bye. Where is it?
Bye, everybody.